The day Julia was meant to be claimed, the skies were mercilessly clear. No rain to mourn her. No wind to carry away the shame. Just blue, sharp, endless, and cruel. She stood in the center of the stone circle, barefoot, trembling, wrapped in ceremonial white that clung too tightly to a body that had never known strength, only submission. Around her, the pack watched in suffocating silence, their faces carved from judgment, their eyes gleaming with the thrill of spectacle. The ritual flames burned high, scented with sage and ironwood, but no heat reached her skin. Her heart thudded like prey in a snare. The elders stood at the edge of the dais, their hands joined, lips moving in ancient words no one truly understood anymore. Behind them, Alpha Remus towered in full form, stoic, silver-haired, his gaze unreadable. But it was not him Julia waited for. It was Liam, her fated mate, her supposed match, chosen by the gods of the blood moon, bound by scent, spirit, and soul. They had grown up together, played in the river's edge, shared stories beneath the moons. And yet now, when his name was called, and he stepped forward, something was wrong. His eyes didn't meet hers. His jaw clenched. And when the final words were spoken, "Do you accept the bond?" he did not answer. Not with his mouth, but with a single gesture. He turned his back. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A murmur like breaking glass. Julia's breath shattered. The bond flared inside her, then cracked, snapped, vanished. The pain was not physical, but it was devastating. Like a part of her had been ripped out and tossed into the fire. The rejection marked her. Forever. The elders said nothing. The Alpha said nothing. Liam walked away, head high, arms steady, like he'd done something noble.
Brave.
Like rejecting an Omega was not the vilest of betrayals. Julia stood there, alone. The wind refused to move. No one came to her side. No one touched her. And that was the beginning of her silence. Days passed. Then weeks. The white dress was burned. Her home reassigned. She was given a corner hut near the edge of the woods, away from the scent trails, far from the beating heart of the pack. They did not exile her. That would have been mercy. They let her remain. But not as one of them. Not truly. She became a warning. A ghost. Children were told not to look at her. Warriors ignored her scent. She fetched her own water, hunted her own food, nursed her own wounds. The wolves were cruel in their apathy. Her body remained intact. Her soul did not. Until the night, she saw the shadow in the trees. She had been gathering kindling near the forest's mouth when she felt it, that shift in the air, that silence too deep to be natural. Her wolf tensed beneath her skin, alert but unsure. She turned slowly, and saw her, the huntress.
Summer.
Cloaked in black fur, bow slung across her back, blades strapped to her thighs. Taller than any Omega had a right to be. Stronger than anyone should have dared to be outside the Alpha's guard. Her presence was legend, half whispered, half feared. Some said she was once an Alpha herself. Others claimed she was a feral born of moonlight and madness. No one knew. But every story ended the same. You did not cross her path unless you were ready to bleed. And yet, Summer stepped forward. Not with threat, but with intent. Julia froze. "I'm not a threat," she said softly, hands raised. "I know what I am." Summer tilted her head. "Do you?" Her voice was deeper than expected.
Smooth.
Confident. Dangerous. "I'm the rejected. I don't want trouble." "You didn't choose to be rejected." "Doesn't matter." "It does," Summer said. "To me." And then, before Julia could flinch, could run, could breathe, Summer extended her hand. Open.
Steady.
Waiting. Julia stared at it like it was a weapon. Or a miracle. And for the first time since the day the bond was broken, someone touched her. Summer's hand was rough with calluses and cold from the night air, but steady, grounded. It hovered between them, unwavering. Not demanding. Not threatening. Just there. Offered. Julia stared at it, heartbeat thunderous in her throat. No one had touched her since the ceremony. not even in passing. Her skin had become sacred in the wrong way, untouchable, cursed, marked by rejection. She had begun to believe that if someone tried, something terrible would happen, that the gods would strike, that the pain would return. But nothing struck when her fingers reached out. No lightning, no fire, only warmth. Her fingertips met Summer's palm, and a strange current surged through her. Not the painful jolt of a bond snapping. No, this was something quieter.
Deeper.
A shiver that began in her wrist and traveled all the way to the base of her spine. Her wolf stirred, confused, alert, curious. Summer's eyes searched hers with a kind of patience that unsettled Julia. Everyone else had looked at her with pity, or disgust, or worse, nothing at all. But Summer saw her, not as a broken omega or a discarded girl, but as something else entirely.
Why?
Julia whispered. Her voice cracked like old glass. Why would you touch me? Summer didn't let go. Because I don't follow their laws. And I don't believe in their shame. You should. You saw what happened. I did. And I saw how no one helped you. Not even the elders. That isn't law. That's cowardice. Julia felt tears rise, unwanted, embarrassing, but too close to stop. You don't know what it's like to be erased. Summer stepped closer. Their joined hands between them. Then let me learn. Those words broke something open inside Julia.
She didn't sob.
Didn't collapse. She simply nodded. And for the first time in moons, she let herself be led. Summer guided her out of the woods, toward a hidden path Julia had never noticed, half-grown with moss and vines, wild and forgotten by the main trail. It led deeper into the forest, away from the heart of the pack's territory. Every step they took together felt like a rebellion, like shedding a skin. They walked in silence, the night around them alive with wolf songs in the far distance. Summer didn't ask questions. She didn't press. She let the silence stretch and bend until it became something safe instead of suffocating. Finally, they reached a clearing ringed with tall pines and low stone ruins. There, half hidden by the underbrush, sat a cabin. Not one of the packs. This place smelled of herbs and steel and solitude. This is where you live? Julia asked. Summer nodded. No one comes here. They're afraid of you. They should be. Why? Because I remember everything they tried to bury. Summer opened the door and motioned for her to enter. Inside, the air was warm with firelight and something earthy. Lavender?
Cedar?
The cabin was small but full of presence. Pelts layered over rough wood floors. Blades hung in rows beside dried herbs and charms carved from bone. It was a hunter's den, but it didn't feel violent. It felt protected. Julia stepped inside like someone entering a sacred space. You really don't follow the pack? I follow the land. And my own instincts. That's enough. Then why save me? Because I could smell your grief. It called to me. That's not how it's supposed to work, Julia whispered. We're not fated. The moon didn't. I don't care what the moon says. Summer's voice cut through the air like a blade. The gods chose for you once. And they failed you. What if you chose this time? Julia sat slowly on the edge of a low cot. Her bones still ached from days of cold sleep and solitude. Her wolf curled tight inside her, confused but not afraid. For the first time, there was no scent of dominance pressing down on her. No alpha trying to assert control. Summer stood across the room, watching her, then poured a cup of something dark and steaming from a kettle. She brought it to Julia, their fingers brushing again. That same current passed between them. Softer this time. Familiar. What is this? Juniper and pine. For strength. Julia sipped. Bitterness bloomed across her tongue, then gave way to heat. Why are you doing this? Because you looked at me like I wasn't real. And I wanted to prove that I am. What does that mean? You looked at me like I was a story.
A myth.
And maybe I am, to them. But not to you. Not if you see me. Not if you stay. Julia didn't know what to say to that. So she drank. And sat. And for the first time in weeks, let her shoulders fall from around her ears. Later that night, when she stood to leave, Summer didn't stop her, but she walked her back to the edge of the woods. No words, just the quiet weight of presence beside her. When they reached the trail, Summer turned. "They'll talk." "They already do," Julia said. "They'll say I'm trying to seduce you, that you're cursed." "I'm already cursed. Then what's one more mark?" Julia smiled. "Just barely." But it was real. "Will I see you again?" she asked. "If you want to." "I do." Summer touched her again then, this time, to her cheek. A single, firm touch. Not a caress. A confirmation. And Julia didn't flinch. When she returned to her hut that night, the wind felt different. Not softer, but less sharp. The door creaked as she opened it, and the silence no longer felt like punishment. It felt like possibility. Of course, the whispers began the next morning. She felt the stairs before she saw them. 2 elders passed her without acknowledging her presence, but their silence was heavier than words. A warrior muttered something about the fallen Omega and the forest ghost. She didn't react, but inside, her wolf bristled. Not from shame, from anger. That night, Julia returned to the edge of the woods. Summer was already waiting. This time when they walked, they did so side by side. And Julia reached for her hand without hesitation. The third night Julia returned to the forest, she didn't wait to see if Summer was there. She simply walked. Her feet knew the path now. Her wolf knew the scent. She no longer flinched at the snapping of twigs or the weight of shadows between the trees. The silence of the forest, once menacing, now felt like a breath held just for her. And when she reached the clearing, Summer was already leaning against the frame of the cabin, arms crossed, eyes shining in the low firelight. "I wasn't sure you'd come," Summer said, voice lower than usual, almost hesitant. "I told you I would." "People are talking. Let them choke on their own words." Summer raised an eyebrow, then motioned her inside. Tonight, the cabin smelled of rosemary and smoke. The fire was stronger, the shadows deeper. Julia stepped in, her shoulders no longer tense, her chin no longer downcast. She wasn't the same girl who'd stood in ceremonial white waiting to be chosen. She wasn't waiting for anything anymore. Summer poured tea again, but they didn't sit apart. They sat close, shoulder to shoulder on the furs near the hearth, knees touching, breath mingling. Julia didn't know who moved first. Maybe it was her. Maybe it was instinct. But when her fingers found Summer's again, this time they didn't just brush. They laced. Summer's hand tightened around hers, grounding her in a way that no alpha bond ever had. "I dreamt of you last night," Julia whispered, voice barely audible. Summer turned to her, slow and still. "What did you see?" "You weren't wearing weapons. And I wasn't afraid to want you."
A beat.
Then another. Summer's hand rose, brushed a strand of hair from Julia's face. "You're not afraid now." "I should be."
Why?
"Because if they find out, they'll tear us apart. Then let them try." Summer leaned in, so close now Julia could feel the heat of her breath against her cheek. "You're not their shame, Julia. You're their fear. You remind them that even the weakest can still choose." "I'm not weak," Julia said, stronger now. "Not anymore." "I know," Summer murmured. "That's why I can't stop looking at you." Their lips met before the words finished hanging in the air. It wasn't a kiss filled with desperation or fire. It was slow, intentional, like a question being asked with every breath. Julia answered it with her whole body, leaning in, fingers gripping the edge of Summer's shirt. The kiss deepened.
Teeth. Tongue.
Heat that burned low and coiled in her belly like something wild awakening. When they pulled apart, they were both breathless. But neither moved away. "Is this foolish?" Julia asked, voice trembling only a little. "Definitely," Summer said. "Will it get us killed?" "Probably." "Then why?" "Because I haven't wanted anything in years. And now I want everything with you." Julia swallowed hard. Her pulse roared in her ears. But she didn't let go. That night she stayed. Not by accident. Not because of fear. but by choice. She curled against Summer's side, their limbs tangled, the scent of pine and skin, and something new wrapping around them like a promise. Morning came too fast. Love what you've seen so far and want to help me keep creating these awesome stories on this channel? Then subscribe and hit the bell. Your subscription supports the channel and makes sure you get more exciting stories. Light spilled through the cracks in the wooden walls, golden and cold. Summer stirred before Julia pressed a kiss to her forehead. They'll notice you're missing. Let them notice. I'm serious. So am I. Julia sat up slowly, her body aching in ways that felt alive. What if we don't hide anymore? Summer paused. You're not ready for that. I think I am. They'll come for you first. Then let them. Julia, no. You found me when I was already dead inside. You gave me breath again. I won't go back to being invisible, not even to keep you safe. They stared at each other in the quiet light. Then Summer nodded. Then we do it on our terms. That morning, Julia walked through the village in daylight. Alone, chin high, hair loose. She didn't wear her omega braid. She didn't lower her eyes. And she didn't avoid the warriors. They saw her. And more importantly, they scented her. Something had changed. She could feel it in the tension of their shoulders, the confusion in their expressions, the fear. She passed Liam near the training grounds. He froze when he saw her. His mouth opened slightly, closed. She didn't stop walking, didn't blink. He turned to watch her go. And when she reached her hut, there was a mark carved into the door. A warning, a message, 2 horizontal lines, rejection and threat. She stared at it for a long time, then turned. That night, she told Summer everything. They marked me. They're going to try to corner me. They'll try to test your strength. Push until you break. Then they'll be surprised. You're still healing. So, help me become dangerous. Summer's eyes gleamed. You want to train?
No.
I want to fight. Then you need to learn more than strength. You need to learn how to make them question whether touching you is worth the price. And so it began. At night, they trained. Summer taught her how to move quietly, how to track with scent, how to listen with more than ears. She taught her pressure points, breath control, how to twist out of a grip, how to shatter a knee with a single strike. And she taught her the hardest thing of all, how to believe she deserved to take up space. Julia bled,
Bruised. Failed.
but she rose, again and again, until her hands were steady and her fear was quieter than her will, until her wolf began to stretch inside her with something almost like pride. Days passed. The tension in the village grew. She felt the shift.
They knew something had changed.
And the elders, especially Elder Thorne, began to watch her more closely. He asked questions cloaked in politeness. About her comings and goings. About the scent on her skin. About the bruises she didn't bother to hide. She gave no answers. But the message was clear. She was no longer safely invisible. Then, 3 nights later, the trap was set. Julia returned to her hut to find the door open. The interior ransacked. Her belongings torn. And a single black feather left on her cot. She turned on instinct and found 2 warriors blocking the doorway. Omega, one of them said. You've forgotten your place. Have I? She said, stepping forward. Then remind me. Summer can't protect you anymore. She doesn't need to. We'll see. And they lunged. Julia didn't scream. She didn't flinch. She didn't even step back. The moment the 2 warriors lunged, something inside her, the thing that had cowered in the back of her ribcage for moons, the thing that whimpered every time she passed the stone circle where she was rejected, snapped. Her body moved before thought. She ducked the first strike, swept low, and kicked hard into the knee of the warrior on the left. He grunted and stumbled but didn't fall. The second one grabbed her arm, twisting it back sharply. Pain lanced through her shoulder, but she gritted her teeth and did exactly what Summer had taught her. She dropped her weight, spun on her heel, used the momentum of her attacker's strength against him. His grip loosened just long enough for her to drive her elbow into his ribs. He gasped. She spun free. It was messy.
Raw.
Not graceful like Summer. Not perfect. But it worked. You've been playing warrior? One of them spat. With the forest witch? No, Julia said, chest heaving, blood pounding in her ears. I've been becoming the wolf you're too afraid to see. They came at her again.
Faster.
Harder. And this time, she didn't hesitate. She aimed for the soft spots. The joints. The places Summer had drilled into her again and again until her hands bled. One of them got a hit in sharp across her jaw, and she tasted blood. But she didn't fall. She smiled. She turned it into momentum, rolled, then slammed her fist into his throat. He collapsed, gasping. The other stumbled back, not expecting the fierceness of her response. You think this makes you strong? He growled. You're still just a rejected Omega. No mate, no rank, no future. I don't need a mate to be dangerous, she said. And I don't need a title to rip you open. He charged. She met him head-on. They collided hard, grappling, breath and sweat and fury mixing as they slammed into the edge of the hut. Her back hit the wall. His hand closed around her throat. She clawed at his wrist, eyes wide. He leaned in close, sneering. This is where you belong, beneath us. She didn't beg. She didn't cry. She remembered Summer's voice.
Pain is a test.
Not a punishment. And then, from the corner of her vision, a blur. A shadow. A storm.
Summer.
She crashed into the warrior like a thunderclap, blade flashing. He went down hard, blood spattered. The first warrior, now crawling to his feet, saw her and froze. You have no right, he growled. She's not claimed. She's not yours. She's not property, Summer snarled. She doesn't need to be claimed to be protected. You'll bring the wrath of the council. Let them come. Her blade kissed the warrior's throat. But I suggest you crawl home before you lose more than your pride. The man spat, but he backed away. He grabbed his injured friend, and the two of them disappeared into the dark. Summer turned to Julia. Her eyes were wild, her breath ragged, her blade still dripping. Are you hurt? Not enough, Julia said, voice shaking. Did you see? Summer looked at her, really looked, saw the blood at her lip, the bruises forming on her arm, the fire in her eyes. I saw everything. I didn't break. No, Summer whispered, lowering her weapon. You woke up. Julia swayed. Summer caught her before she fell. They sank to the ground, Julia in her lap, both of them trembling in silence. Then Julia laughed. Not cruelly, not bitterly, but with the lightness of a girl who had been held underwater and was finally breathing. I think I scared them. You terrified them. Good. How did you know they were here? I didn't, Summer said. I was coming to see you. I felt something wrong. I ran. You didn't save me. I didn't need to. Julia leaned her head into Summer's shoulder. That's the part that scares me most.
Why?
Because now I know I can do this. Without anyone.
Even you.
That's the point, Julia. Is it?
Yes.
I didn't want to rescue you. I wanted you to rise. And if I hadn't, then I would have burned this village to the ground for you. Summer's voice was quiet.
Steady.
Deadly honest. Julia didn't respond. She didn't need to. She just closed her eyes and breathed her in. Her scent, her strength, her presence. They stayed like that until the sun began to rise. When they finally stood, they didn't speak of what had happened. Not yet. They walked together, not to the cabin, but to the training cliffs beyond the northern ridge, far from the village. Summer moved slower than usual, her eyes never leaving Julia's face. They'll retaliate, she said. I know. They'll say you attacked them. Let them. They might try to exile you for this. Julia turned to her. Then I'll have no more reason to stay quiet. You'd go to war? I already am. Summer smiled. There was pride there, but also fear. You've changed. You changed me. No, Summer said. You just stopped hiding. At the cliffs, they trained harder than ever. Julia's movements had more confidence now. Her strikes were sharper. her body faster. There was no hesitation in her eyes. Only hunger. The hunger of someone who had been powerless her whole life and now tasted the edge of what she could become. That night, Summer cooked stew over the fire in the cabin while Julia cleaned the cuts on her arms. They didn't talk much, but the silence was different now. Comfortable.
Shared. Earned.
Will you stay with me tonight? Summer asked softly. Even if they come looking? Julia crossed the room, sat beside her. I want them to come. Summer reached up, brushed her thumb across Julia's bruised cheek. You're beautiful like this. Bloodied.
No. Free.
Julia leaned forward, kissed her slowly.
Gently.
Like sealing a pact. That night, they made love like wolves, intense, quiet, and filled with something deeper than heat. A reverence. A claiming of souls, not bodies. It was not the bond the gods had chosen. It was better, because it was theirs. In the early morning, Summer woke first. She stepped outside, stared at the first silver rays of dawn, and saw the messengers on the ridge. 2 of them, dressed in crimson, marked by the elder's crest. Summer's expression didn't change. She turned. Julia, she said. They're coming. The summons came at dawn. 2 messengers, cloaked in crimson and silence, approached the edge of Summer's cabin with the stiffness of wolves obeying orders they didn't understand. Summer didn't let them speak first. She stepped forward, barefooted, bare-armed, with the wildness of the woods clinging to her like armor. Say what you came to say, she commanded. One of them flinched before speaking. Julia of the Ashmoon Pack is hereby summoned to stand before the circle of elders under accusations of defiance, incitement, and violation of caste order. Julia appeared in the doorway behind Summer, her voice cold. When?
Now.
Of course. Summer turned to her, eyes already burning. We don't have to go. Yes, Julia said, stepping past her. We do. They'll try to break you. Then I'll show them I already survived that once. She dressed in silence. No ceremonial robes. No braids. No submission. She wore her training leathers, dark and scuffed and scarred, just like her. She let her hair fall free down her back untamed. She didn't wear scent blockers. She wanted them to smell what she had become. Summer followed her the whole way, silent but near, close enough to reach for her hand, though she didn't.
Not yet.
When they arrived at the stone circle, it was already filled. Not just the elders, not just the warriors, but nearly every wolf in the pack. Julia's rejection had made her a symbol. Now her defiance made her a spectacle. She didn't flinch beneath their stares. She stepped into the center where once she had waited to be chosen, and now stood to choose herself. Elder Thorn stood across from her, flanked by 6 others, their robes gray, their eyes glinting like polished ice. You have been called, Thorn said, because you have endangered the structure that keeps this pack united. You have consorted with a known exile, trained in combat forbidden to your caste, and assaulted members of the warrior tier. I defended myself, Julia said. Her voice didn't waver. And I sought guidance from a protector when none of you offered me safety. She is not one of us. She's more wolf than half your warriors. A murmur ran through the crowd. Thorn's lip curled. You are out of place, Omega. Then maybe your place was never meant to hold me. We gave you shelter after your rejection. You gave me silence. Isolation. You made me a pariah for something I didn't choose. You were marked unworthy by the bond. No, her voice sharpened. I was marked inconvenient. And you let that story define me because it was easier than asking why the bond broke in the first place. A sharp inhale from someone behind the elders. Thorn narrowed his eyes. Are you suggesting the gods made a mistake? No, she said. I'm saying you did. He stepped forward. This is not a space for insolence. Then maybe it's time someone dragged it into the light. You will not speak again without permission, then silence me. The words dropped like a challenge. The circle froze. Even the wind held its breath. You stand here accused of crimes, Thorn hissed.
What say you?
Julia turned slowly in the center, addressing not the council, but the crowd. I say I am not a crime. I say that rejection is not rot. I say that strength does not wear only the skin of alphas. Her voice rose. I say that the system you built, where pain is praised and obedience is survival, is not sacred. It's sick. A stunned silence. Then, from the edge of the crowd, a single voice. And if she speaks the truth, it was Summer. She stepped into the circle, calm and slow, her presence like a blade sliding free of its sheath. If everything she says is true, she continued, then the shame is not hers. It's yours. You have no authority here, Thorn growled. You are exiled. Then exile me again. She walked until she stood beside Julia. But before you do, know this. I am not here to speak for her. I am here because she speaks for herself, and I choose to stand beside her. Thorn sneered. So, you admit the bond? Summer looked at Julia, then back at him. There is no bond. Not from the gods. Not from the moon. But what we have is stronger than fate. It was chosen, earned, survived. Julia lifted her chin. We chose each other. Isn't that what wolves do when no one's watching? The elders conferred. Voices hushed. Arguments low. At last, Thorn turned back to them. You leave us no choice. He raised a hand. By the law of the Ashmoon Pack, Julia is to be stripped of name, rank, and protection. From this moment forward, she is declared Ferris, wild, unclaimed, unbound. She will be cast beyond the borderlands by sundown. The pack gasped, some in pity, others in approval, but none stepped forward. None but Summer. Then I go too. You're already an outsider. Then I'll remain one, Summer said. But this time, I'll do it with someone worth bleeding for. Thorn's lip curled. And you'll die the same way. Alone. Wrong again. Summer reached for Julia's hand. Their fingers intertwined. Strong. Sure. Visible. This time, she said, we burn a new path. As the sun began to fall, they were escorted to the edge of the territory. No ceremony. No parting words. Just the hard silence of banishment. Summer walked ahead, blade strapped to her back, gaze steady. Julia followed, chin high, her heart pounding like war drums. But not in fear. In readiness. At the border, Summer stopped. Turned. Are you sure? Yes. Even now. Especially now. Summer offered her hand. Julia took it. And together, they stepped into exile. The moment their feet crossed the border, something shifted in the air. It wasn't just exile, it was rebirth. The lands beyond Ashmoon territory were untamed, thick with fog and silence, and legends half-whispered to pups who never believed them. Julia had only ever heard stories about the Ferris lands. No pack claimed them. No laws ruled them. It was where the forgotten went to die, or, if the stories were true, where they became something else entirely. They walked for hours in silence, the forest deepening around them, the trees older and twisted, their roots tangled like secrets beneath the moss. Julia's feet bled. Her muscles screamed. But she didn't stop. Summer said nothing, just kept walking with the steady, quiet rhythm of a hunter who had done this before. When the sky darkened, they found shelter in the ruins of what once might have been a watchtower, now overgrown with ivy and memory. They built a small fire, ate dried meat and silence. Finally, Julia spoke. This isn't your first time out here. Summer looked at her across the fire. Her eyes gleamed like obsidian. No, you lived here. Yes. Why? A pause. Then, because I chose exile before they could strip me of myself. Julia studied her, the curve of her jaw, the scars along her collarbone, the edge in her voice that never softened. What did you do? Summer's lips twitched. Not quite a smile. I broke an alpha's jaw. In public. During a claiming ceremony. Julia blinked. Why? Because he tried to claim someone who didn't want him. She said no. He didn't stop. So I made him stop. And they punished you for that? They don't care about protection. Only preservation. The system protects itself, not the wolves inside it. Julia's hands clenched in her lap. How many more have they exiled? Too many. And they all stayed gone?
Some.
Some didn't make it. Some disappeared. And you? I survived. Alone. Not anymore. That night, they didn't sleep pressed close for warmth or comfort. They slept entangled in quiet purpose, hearts synced like drumbeats beneath the same rising moon. Julia dreamt of running. Not away, but toward something. She ran through the forest, her body not in human form but wolf, massive, silver-eyed, faster than she'd ever known herself to be. But when she looked down, her fur wasn't just brown. It shimmered, like smoke and moonlight. When she woke, the fire was out, but her body felt electric. She stretched, bones cracking, and for a moment her claws, yes, claws, didn't retract as quickly as usual. Summer noticed. You shifted in your sleep. What? Not fully, but enough to stir the forest. That's not possible. It is here. They moved again the next day.
Deeper.
The terrain grew rougher. The energy in the air heavier. They passed broken stones marked with old symbols Julia couldn't read, but somehow felt in her bones. And there, in a valley sunk between cliffs, they found them. Wolves. Dozens. Maybe more. Not in full form, not pack-bound, not dressed in robes or ranks, but alive.
Wild.
Watching. Julia froze. Summer didn't. She stepped forward, lifted her hands.
We seek passage, she said.
And peace. The wolves stepped aside. Julia followed, heart hammering, eyes wide. Who are they? She whispered. The unclaimed. The true Ferris. Wolves who escaped the system and survived. They look like us. Because they are. A tall figure approached them. Female, broad-shouldered, with graying hair and scars across her neck. She looked at Summer, then Julia. You brought her, she said. The one who rose. Julia swallowed. You know about me? We felt you. When the bond was broken. When the girls stood in fire and didn't burn. That wasn't fire, Julia said softly. It was silence. Even more dangerous. The woman stepped forward. I am Mara. Once Alpha. Now nothing but breath and Fong. You are welcome here if you respect the wild. We do, Julia said. But I don't know what I'm becoming. No one does. Until it's too late. That night, they stayed in the Ferris camp. It wasn't a village, not like Ash Moon. There were no walls. No hierarchy. Just tents and firelight and wolves that moved with freedom and wariness. Summer walked among them like she had never left. Julia stayed close, absorbing, watching. And then the pain hit.
Sudden. Deep.
Burning. Like her spine was splintering from the inside out. She dropped to her knees, gasping, clutching her sides. Summer was there instantly. Breathe, she said. What's happening to me? Your wolf, Summer said. She's waking. But it's not the full moon. You're not bound to their cycles anymore. Julia screamed. Her skin rippled. Her vision blurred. Everything felt like heat and breaking and wind. Then, darkness. When she opened her eyes again, it was morning. The sky was pale and quiet. And Summer sat beside her, holding her hand, eyes shining with something like awe. What happened? Julia asked, voice hoarse. Summer leaned in. You shifted. Fully. And not into the wolf you knew. You became something older. Older. Ancient. That's not possible. It is here. Julia sat up slowly. Her body ached in strange places. Her hearing was sharper. Her scent stronger. Her skin buzzed like thunder lived beneath it. Mara approached, eyes gleaming. You woke something sacred, she said. And now it cannot sleep again. What does it mean? It means the world that cast you out should be afraid. Julia looked at Summer. What do we do now? Now, Summer said, her voice soft and certain. We stop running. But even as she said it, a hawk circled above them. And on its leg, tied to its claw, was a scroll, marked with the blood-red wax seal of Ashmun's council. Mara untied it. Read it. Her eyes narrowed.
They've issued a bounty, she said.
On both of you. Already? Summer growled. That was fast. They're scared, Mara said. Of what she'll become. What does it say? Julia asked. It says anyone who brings you back alive will be granted absolution. And anyone who kills you will be honored. Julia stood.
Slowly.
Fully. Her voice didn't shake. Then let them come. The bounty changed everything. Word spread faster than blood through water. Across the wildlands, mercenaries, exiles, and desperate rogues caught the scent of the reward and followed it like moths to flame. Julia could feel the shift even before Mara confirmed it. The Ferris wolves grew tenser, the nights quieter, the eyes sharper. Danger no longer crept in shadows. It galloped toward them, bold and brazen. Summer took Julia away from the camp the same night the scroll arrived. We can't stay here, she said. Not with that target on your back. On our backs, Julia corrected. Summer hesitated. On yours most of all.
They didn't argue about it.
There wasn't time. They moved through dense woods, fast and silent. But Julia's hearing was no longer what it once was. Her senses sharpened since the shift. She could hear heartbeats through bark, feel heat patterns on the wind. Her wolf had changed. And so had she. There's a cave system ahead, Summer said.
Deep. Protected.
I stayed there once, years ago. Alone. Always. The question lingered. Heavy. Not just about the cave. About the past Summer never spoke of. But they didn't stop. Not until the air turned cold and wet and the canopy thickened to near darkness. The cave mouth yawned from the stone like a secret. They entered. Inside, Julia lit a torch with a flint spark. The walls pulsed with mineral veins and echoes. You've brought others here, she said. Summer didn't look at her. Once.
Who?
Silence. Then Summer finally said, her name was Riven. Julia's chest tightened. A mate? Almost. Summer crouched by the fire pit, arranging kindling. We were bonded by battle.
Exile. Pain.
She was the first one who didn't flinch when I lost control. What happened? Summer's jaw tensed. She didn't survive the storm. Storm? A pack that hunted exiles. They surrounded us. Riven, she made a choice. She gave herself up so I could escape. You left her? She told me to. Ordered me to. I hated her for it. I loved her for it. And I never forgave myself. Julia sat down slowly. The fire crackled. Why are you telling me now? Because they're coming again. And I don't want to survive alone this time. Julia reached for her hand. Then don't. But something shifted in Summer's face. A flicker of guilt. Of fear. There's something else, she said. What? The power inside you. It's not just wild. It's old. It's Ferris, yes. But it's also bloodline. Julia frowned. What are you saying? I think you're a descendant of the lost alpha line. The one erased from the records after the schism. The gods didn't reject you, Julia. The system did, because they feared what you carry. That's not possible. It is. And the elders knew it. That's why Liam rejected you. Not because he didn't want you. Because he was ordered to. Rage curled in Julia's gut. You knew this. I suspected. When I first scented you, before the rejection, you didn't smell like an Omega. You smelled like ash and moonfire. Like royalty. And you didn't tell me? Because I thought it would break you. I thought you needed to rise on your own. You should have told me. I'm telling you now. Julia stood, trembling. The torchlight made her eyes look like storms. You kept it from me, like they did. No, Summer said, rising too. I stayed by your side.
They didn't.
I trained you, fought for you, loved you. And you still didn't trust me with the truth. Because I didn't trust myself to lose you. The words landed like a wound. Julia looked away, fists clenched. Then movement. A sound outside. Metal against stone. Breath on wind. They're here, she said. I know. Summer moved to the entrance. Blades drawn. We fight. No, Julia said, stepping beside her. We end it. The mercenaries came in packs of 4. Wolves in partial shift, faces twisted by greed. That the bounty? One sneered. Doesn't look like much. Then you haven't been paying attention, Julia said.
Her voice was calm.
Her wolf close to the surface.
Summer didn't speak. She didn't need to.
She moved like a shadow and struck like a star falling. Julia followed, not behind, but beside. The battle was violent, fast, and full of teeth. Julia moved with a grace she hadn't known she possessed.
Her claws sang.
Her body burned with purpose. One of the mercenaries lunged for Summer's back. Julia saw it, twisted mid-fight, and slammed her body into his, snapping bone with the force of her fury. You're stronger than before, Summer said, breathless, bloodied. Because I know who I am now. By the end, the stone floor was slick with blood, and the only 2 still standing were the ones banished by the world. Julia's arm bled. Summer's cheek was split, but they were alive.
Whole.
Unbroken.
They won't stop, Summer said.
Let them come, Julia replied. I'm done hiding. Summer turned to her, hands shaking. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. Julia stepped closer. Don't be sorry.
Just be with me.
Their foreheads touched. The scent of battle and love and ash between them. Always, Summer whispered. That night, they buried the bodies. Not out of mercy, but so the next wave would find nothing but silence. Julia stood at the cave's edge, watching the stars. Her wolf stirred beneath her skin. Not restless. Ready. Summer joined her, wrapping an arm around her waist. So what now? She asked. Julia's voice was steady. Now we find the rest. The lost ones. The silenced ones. And we show them they're not alone. Summer smiled, but there was sorrow in it. You're not the same girl I found in the woods. No, Julia said. She died. And I became the thing they tried to bury. Far away in the distance a signal fire was lit. And another. And another. The wildlands were waking. And they had chosen their queen. They didn't build a camp. They built a movement. Word spread faster than fire through the wildlands. Julia, the rejected Omega-turned-Ferris queen, was no longer a story whispered in anger or pity. She was a signal. A call. A howl that woke the blood of those who had long been silenced. The exiled came first. Scarred, cautious, watching. Wolves who had been broken by the system and left to rot. Summer stood at Julia's side as they arrived, never speaking for her, but always with her. Julia didn't lead with command. She led with fire. She trained beside them, bled with them, hunted and fought and howled beneath the moons. For the first time in her life, her voice echoed back. And with every passing day, the Ferris grew. Not a pack. A storm. They camped near the borderlines of Ashmoon territory, close enough to be seen, to be heard, to be impossible to ignore. Summer was never far. They shared a tent made of stitched pelts and woven branches, but more than that, they shared breath, scars, and promises. At night, their bodies moved like they had never belonged anywhere else but together. They were mates in everything but name, by choice, by fire, by war. But peace was never meant to last. It started with a scent.
Faint.
Familiar.
Wrong.
Summer stiffened first. Julia noticed the way her lover's body locked, breath shallow, jaw tight. What is it? Julia asked. Someone's here, Summer said. Not just anyone. Julia rose slowly. Tell me. I thought she was dead. The figure appeared at the edge of the treeline.
Tall.
Built like a blade. Black hair in tight braids, eyes sharp as stone. She wore no crest. No colors. Only a single thong pendant around her throat.
Summer, she called.
The name was a wound. Summer stepped forward slowly. Julia followed, every nerve braced. The woman smiled, bitter and slow. So it's true. You've replaced me. Julia's breath caught. Who is she? Riven, Summer whispered. Julia froze. The name. The story. The one who died in a storm. The one Summer mourned. Not dead. Not gone. Standing here, with fury in her eyes and something else beneath it, betrayal. You said she was gone, Julia said quietly. I thought she was, Summer replied. I watched her fall. Clearly not hard enough. Riven's voice cut between them. You left me, buried me in the rain, and didn't even look back. You told me to run. I told you to fight. I would have died.
Good.
Then at least I wouldn't have been alone. Silence.
Tense.
Explosive. Riven stepped closer. And now you've found yourself a new Omega to save. Is that it? Julia didn't flinch. She didn't save me. I rose on my own. Of course you did, Riven said, eyes scanning her. You look like her type. Soft heart, broken soul, something to fix. I'm not broken. No, Riven said. But you will be. Why are you here? Summer asked. Because the council sent me. Julia's breath stilled. You're working for them? I was captured.
Tortured.
Left for dead. They found me. Promised absolution. Promised I could face you. Her eyes locked on Summer. They said I could end the traitor with my own teeth. And you believed them? Summer asked.
No.
But I believed in the chance to see you one more time. And maybe burn down whatever lie you built in my place. Julia stepped forward. If you want to kill her, you'll have to go through me. That's the idea, Riven said, drawing a blade. Summer moved instantly, stepping between them. No, she doesn't need protection, Riven sneered. She needs to know who you really are. She knows, Summer growled. Does she? Riven's gaze turned to Julia. Did she tell you how she used to be a warden? One of them. One of the ones who dragged Omegas by the hair into silence. Before she was exiled. Before she had guilt. Julia looked at Summer. Is it true? Summer's mouth was a line of regret. I was raised inside the system. I believed it. I enforced it. Until the first time I saw it destroy someone who didn't deserve it. Like Riven. Like you. Julia stepped back. You never told me. Because I was ashamed. Because I wanted to be someone better before you knew who I used to be. I trusted you. You still can. Can I? Summer reached for her, and Julia didn't move. Riven watched, arms crossed.
See, she said.
Not so perfect after all. Julia turned. Leave. This isn't over, Riven said. It is for now. Julia's voice was iron. If you ever loved her, you'll walk away. Riven's eyes softened. For the briefest second. Then she disappeared into the trees. Silence fell. Julia stood alone, staring at the space where Riven had been. Summer stepped forward. I never meant to lie. I just didn't know how to tell you who I was before you. You were one of them, Julia whispered. And now I'm not. You let me believe you were always wild. I've become wild. Julia didn't speak. She turned and walked into the camp. Summer didn't follow. That night, Julia didn't sleep beside anyone. She stared at the stars and wondered what else she didn't know. Not about Summer. About herself. Because even now, even in the fury and heartbreak, her blood still felt hot. Her power still pulsed. Her wolf still whispered more is coming. The next morning, scouts returned with news. Riven hadn't gone far. She had gathered others, mercenaries, former wardens, wolves who believed the Ferris were a threat. They weren't working for the council. Not anymore. They had their own plan. She's building a faction, Mara said. And she's using your name to recruit. My name? Julia asked. She says she wants to free the Ferris. From you. Julia stood in the center of the camp, surrounded by wolves who followed her willingly. Her voice didn't shake. Then we make them see the truth. Summer stepped out of the shadows. You don't have to fight her alone. I know, Julia said. But I might have to forgive her. For your sake. And mine. Summer bowed her head. I'm sorry. Prove it, Julia said. Stand beside me when she comes. Always. In the distance, a new fire was lit. This one not a signal. A warning. Riven was coming. And she wasn't coming alone. Riven's army moved like a storm, silent, fast, and merciless. By the time the Ferris scouts returned from the eastern ridge, The fires had already reached the edge of the wildlands. Julia stood at the center of the clearing, eyes closed, palms open, feeling the pulse of the forest shift. Not in fear. In warning. Summer approached her from behind. She's coming with at least 40. Maybe more. How many of ours are ready? 20. Maybe 25 if Mara joins. She will. Julia opened her eyes. They glowed faintly in the shadows, silver laced with flame. Riven won't wait for negotiations. Then we won't offer them. Do you want me to speak to her? Summer asked. No, Julia turned to her. She already thinks you're still hers. That's her weakness. Let her come for me. Summer's jaw tensed. She won't fight fair. Neither will I. They prepared for war in silence. Not with banners or speeches, but with steel and scent and instinct. The Ferris had no formations. No battle cries. Only unity. Julia moved through them, touching shoulders, locking eyes, reminding them with every step that they were not alone. When the first sounds of Riven's approach came, branches breaking, leaves trembling, breath caught in the wind, Julia stepped forward. Summer at her side, Mara to her left. Behind her, wolves who had nothing left to lose. In front of her, a woman with a wound for a smile and vengeance in her fists. So, Riven said, stepping from the trees, the false queen stands. The one who abandoned her sisters dares to call anyone false? Julia replied, I didn't abandon them. I was left behind. Don't you know the difference? I do, Julia said. It's the space between grief and choice. Riven's blade gleamed in the half-light. Give me Summer and I'll spare the rest. Julia's expression didn't change. She's not mine to give. Then you'll lose everything. I already did. And then I found myself. Riven growled. You're nothing. I'm what comes after silence. The attack came, without warning. Riven's army surged forward in a wave of claws and teeth. The Ferris met them head-on, no hesitation, no fear. Julia lost sight of Summer almost instantly in the chaos. The clearing erupted into screams, steel, and transformation. Wolves shifted midair. Bodies slammed against trunks. Blood painted bark and skin and snow. Julia moved like breath and lightning, her wolf form slipping at the edges of her skin, flickering with silver and flame. She fought without mercy, without pause. She fought like someone who had been caged her entire life and now had something worth dying for. Riven found her in the center of it all. Their blades met in a clash that sent sparks into the sky. You fight like her, Riven hissed. You mean like someone she believed in? Julia struck harder. Riven was fast, furious. But Julia had purpose. And purpose was heavier than rage. They circled each other, bloodied, breathless. You think you're better than me? Riven snarled. No, Julia said. I think I survived what you couldn't. You know nothing about me. I know you'd rather destroy what Summer loves than face what she lost. Riven screamed and lunged. And Julia was ready. But in the last second, a blur stepped between them. Summer. She took the blade meant for Julia. The sound was small.
A breath. A gasp.
A body falling. No, Julia whispered. Riven stumbled back, eyes wide. That wasn't. You aimed, Julia said, voice shaking. She dropped to her knees. Summer's body was bleeding fast. Too fast. Stay with me, please. Summer's hand reached up, bloodied fingers tracing Julia's jaw. Don't stop. Don't you dare die on me. I'm not. I'm choosing. Choosing what? To be your last lesson. Julia screamed. Not a sound of fear. Not grief. A howl. A howl that cracked the air and made the trees bow. A howl that wasn't just wolf but something older.
Deeper.
The Ferris froze. The enemies froze. The wind stopped. And from Julia's skin, power erupted. Not like fire. Not like lightning. Like truth. Her wolf form broke free. Fully, finally. But it wasn't brown or gray, or even silver. It was white flame, rimmed in shadow, eyes glowing gold. Ancient. Sacred.
Terrifying.
The others dropped to their knees. Even Riven. What is she? Someone whispered. Mara's voice trembled. She's the Bloodhowl. That's just a myth. She's not a myth. She's the one who comes when the balance breaks. When too many are silenced. When the land itself demands reckoning. Julia stood, taller than any wolf in the clearing. Her howl shook the bones of every creature who heard it. And when she moved, they didn't follow, they obeyed. Riven dropped her blade. Kill me, she said. I won't, Julia replied. Her voice, even in wolf form, was clear. Because you lost something too. But you won't take it from me. You should.
No.
I'll show you how to live with it. She turned back to Summer. Human again in a blink. Her hands trembling. Stay with me. Please. But Summer's eyes were dimming. Her mouth opened. I love you. And her body went still. Julia broke. Her head fell to Summer's chest.
Her whole body shaking.
But the Ferris gathered around. Quiet. Reverent. No one moved. Until Mara spoke. There's still time. What? Julia gasped. The ancient wolves, the Bloodhowl, can call the spirit back. But only once. What do I do? You choose. Julia stood. The power still burned under her skin, but it was quieter now. Heavy. Sacred. She looked down at Summer's body. Then I'd choose her. Again. Always. She knelt, pressed her forehead to Summer's heart, and howled. One note.
Pure.
Endless. The light around her swirled. The air thickened. The others backed away. And beneath her hands, Summer gasped. Her eyes opened. And she breathed. The forest did not return to silence. It held its breath, suspended in the aftermath of blood, light, and something older than memory. Julia knelt beside Summer, her hands trembling against warm skin, the echo of her howl still vibrating in the trees. Around her, the Ferris wolves, those who had once been outcasts, exiles, forgotten names, stood in stunned reverence, their heads bowed, not in fear, but in awe. Summer blinked slowly, her breath shallow but steady, her eyes searching until they found Julia's face. You brought me back, she whispered. Julia's throat clenched. You brought yourself back. I just called you home. Summer lifted a bloodied hand and cupped Julia's jaw. You're not the same girl who was left behind. No, Julia said, tears sliding silently. And I don't ever want to be again. Behind them, Riven stood, her blade dropped, her army scattered, her defiance shattered by the light she had seen. You should have ended me, she said softly. Julia turned. Killing you would have proved their way right. I don't want revenge. I want to break the cycle. And if I don't stop trying to take her from you, you won't, Julia said, stepping forward. Because you saw what I am. And you know I didn't just earn it. I became it. With every scar, every rejection, every choice. Riven lowered her gaze. I thought I was the one left behind. But maybe I was just too afraid to change. Then start now, Julia said. Help us build something better. You'd let me stay? If you stop fighting shadows. Riven nodded once. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was the first breath of something like it. That night, the fires were lit not for war, but for healing. The wounded were tended, the dead honored, and the wildlands, for the first time in decades, felt like a place of future instead of exile. Julia sat by the fire with Summer, her head resting on the huntress's shoulder, fingers intertwined, heart finally beating in rhythm with something other than survival. You died for me, Julia whispered. I would again. Don't. Julia turned to her, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. Stay with me. Live with me.
Choose me.
Every day. Summer smiled, eyes soft and fierce all at once. I already do. Then say it. I choose you, Summer said, voice low, steady. Not because fate demands it, but because my heart does. My wolf does. I do. Julia kissed her.
Slow. Deep.
Not in desperation, not in pain, but in promise. Around them, the Ferris wolves celebrated not a victory, but a beginning. Mara approached them near dawn.
They're waiting, she said.
Julia stood, still holding Summer's hand. For what? For your word. They walked to the center of the camp. The others gathered, wolves from every corner of the wildlands.
Scarred, strong, awake.
Julia looked at each face. No ranks, no chains, just truth. I was rejected, she said, her voice clear in the morning light. Not because I was weak, but because I was different. Because I threatened the story they needed you to believe. That only certain wolves deserve power. That fate chooses who matters. She paused, breath catching. But I am fate.
And so are you.
The crowd murmured, a ripple of emotion. They built a world where silence meant survival, where obedience was mistaken for honor. I say no more. We do not belong to the gods or the elders or any system that defines us by birth or bond. We are Ferris, wild by choice, united by truth. She lifted her head. I won't call myself Alpha. I won't create another crown to break under its own weight. But I will stand here with you as your equal, your protector, your storm. She reached for Summer, who stepped forward, eyes fierce. And I will stand with her, not behind, not ahead, but beside. The crowd howled. One voice, one sound. Not worship, unity. In the days that followed, the Ferris camp transformed into something new. Wolves began building shelters, carving out territory, but not borders, pathways. Julia and Summer led not with decrees, but with example. They hunted together, slept tangled in furs, trained side by side. And when the moon rose full again, the old rite of bonding was offered. Julia hesitated. Do we need it? She asked Summer. Only if you want to mark it. Not because we have to, because we choose to. Julia nodded. Then yes. In a clearing lit by moonlight and surrounded by those who had once been forgotten, Julia and Summer stood before a single stone, barefooted, barehearted. There were no elders, no chants, no collars or chains, just a promise, spoken without shame. I choose you, Julia said, again, again, and again. And I, Summer said, choose the fire in your blood, the wolf in your bones, the girl who survived, and the woman you became. They kissed beneath the stars, and the bond, one not from the gods, but from their own defiant love, flared between them like a new sun. No longer rejected, no longer hunted, no longer afraid. Julia was not the girl who begged to be loved. She was the one who taught others to love themselves. The blood howl,
The spark.
the end of the old world, and the beginning of something untamed, unbreakable.